All right, good evening. How y'all doing? Thank you for being here this evening. I just want the record to reflect that we have Vianners. So my name is Randy Gu. I'm the curator of modern political and historical collections here at the Stuart A. Rose Manuscript Archives and Rare Book Library. It's my pleasure to welcome y'all here to Emory. How many of y'all, is this the first time you've been to the Rose Library? Lots of y'all. Even though we have some of your collections, This is the first time you've been here. That's trust, blind trust. So for those of you who are here the first time, I want to talk about two things about the Rose Library's mission. The Rose Library's mission is to acquire, preserve, arrange, describe, and provide public access to materials of lasting historical value. So the two things that I want to emphasize tonight are providing public access and lasting historical value. So first, providing public access. That's the most important part of our mission. We acquire, preserve, arrange, and describe materials so that we can provide access to them. We're free and open to the public. Anyone can come in and explore these stories and other stories that are in our collections. The second aspect that I want to emphasize is materials of lasting historical value. Whether y'all know it or not, we are here this evening to celebrate materials of lasting historical value that were created by people that are in this room. What is the lesson in that? I'm going to paraphrase the band The Minutemen here. The lesson is our archives can be your life. All right? Archives don't have to be old. They don't have to be dusty. You don't have to put on white gloves to interact with these materials. These stories are about us, about our lives, and about what we do. What are y'all laughing at? So as we go through the program, hey, behave, or you're out. I'll call security. So tonight, as we go through this program, think about that. Our archives can be your life. This is what it's about. Here are materials of lasting historical value. So, one housekeeping thing. We're doing a little research. If y'all would be kind enough to fill out the surveys and then deposit them on your way down to the elevator where food and drink will be served later on this evening. And right now, it gives me great pleasure to introduce you to tonight's host, Andrew Kingston. Andrew is a Robert W. Woodruff Library Graduate Fellow, and he's also a PhD candidate in the Department of Comparative Literature. Andrew, it's all yours. Good luck.
Thanks all for coming. This is supposed to be a full slideshow, but I see what you're talking about, Rossi. It's good. Looks good.
I rigged it really good. You would get stuck on the
But really, thank you all for coming. It's super humbling to see everyone come out tonight. So I'm going to keep this brief. Just explain what's going on for tonight on the program, and then I'll say some brief remarks in case anyone here is not familiar with the show. And then I'll turn it over to Andy Ditzler, who will give a more proper introduction. So tonight we'll all talk, and then Andy Ditzler, and then we'll watch a 35-minute clip reel that I've put together. And then we'll have about 45 minutes or so for Q&A. Afterwards, Brendan will be coming around with a mic. I'll ask you all to keep your questions brief if possible. And he'll be holding out the mic for you. And then we'll have a reception with some pretty good food, I'm told. So, and some alcohol. So just some brief remarks. The American Music Show, I'll just give some facts, basically. It was a show produced here in Atlanta from 1981 to 2005. It featured performance art, improvised sketch comedy, musical drag performances, reports from around the city as it evolved, right? It was filmed in various basements, living rooms, clubs, really all over Atlanta. ended up chronicling a lot of the city's history. So we'll see some of that tonight. RuPaul got his start in the show, the household name RuPaul, as well as figures like Jane County and Lady Bunny passed through. Because of that content and because of its extremely long run, it was called by the wonderful local publication, Wussy Mag, one of the most thorough archives of queer Atlanta history. So that's where the title comes from of the event tonight. Archives of the American Music Show. But the show is not monolithic either, and might well be remembered for its commentaries on racial or religious politics in the South, for its ironic or campy style, for promotion of local music, or sometimes subtle, sometimes outright absurd humor. The cast of the show, some of whom we have here tonight with us, created an entire fictional world, but also a quite real one of ambiguous and silly characters through which they present a really unique picture of what Atlanta was and what it could be. So I'm going to go ahead and introduce the cast members who have graciously joined us tonight, some from out of state. So we've got David Goldman, who came all the way from Daytona. Patsy Duncan. James Bond. Rosser Szymanski. Claire Butler. Tom Zarilli. And from Asheville, North Carolina, Arj. All right, so without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and introduce Andy Ditzler. Andy Ditzler was trained as a musician at the Indiana University and graduated from the Institute of Liberal Arts here at Emory University with a concentration in curation. He co-founded the Idea Collective, John Q. He's also the curator of Film Love, the Film Love series, which you can find at filmlove.org. He curated an American Music Show retrospective called How to Live in the City. Here's Andy Ditzler.
Hi, it's a great honor to be here and to introduce to you, give a brief introduction to the American Music Show. Thank you, Andrew and Randy and everyone here at Rose. I researched this collection for a couple years on the way to presenting a retrospective of programs, and it was a great joy. I'm thinking of Dick Richards a lot tonight, as I know most of us are, and so. So my remarks are certainly in his memory. Very generous to me personally, just dropping into his life and wanting to ask a bunch of questions about the American Music Show. And he was so generous in his responses, and he was inspiration to a lot of us, including me. There's so many people besides the people you've met just now who made crucial contributions to the show, and I hope we can bring up their names in the panel as well. Since these remarks will be quite brief, can't do that justice now, but we'll have time afterward to talk. I'm pleased to say that on May 9th, I'll present a program of American Music Show material at the High Museum as part of the Film Love series. So please come to the High Museum on May 9th, and we'll see more of this. So one possible beginning for the American Music Show would be the 1972 presidential campaign of George McGovern, running against Richard Nixon. And two people met working on that campaign in Atlanta, James Bond and Dick Richards. Dick Richards was a young gay man who had moved to Atlanta. James had a long history in the civil rights movement here, and his brother, of course, is Julian Bond, the well-known civil rights activist, legislator, educator, and sometime performer on the American Music Show. The next year, 1973, James ran for and won a seat on Atlanta City Council, where he served 2 4-year terms. Now, I'll get to that in a minute, but the American Music Show then starts a few years later, actually as a radio show on WRFG in Atlanta, Little 5 Points, where James and Dick co-hosted. Around 79, 80, in his role as city councilman, James is instrumental in setting up public access television here in the city of Atlanta. That's a very long, complex story, which I hope we can address also afterward. But together with Potsy Duncan, Dick and James have the first broadcast of the American Music Show in January of 1981. Went for 24 years on a weekly basis. The first few years of American Music Show were taped in the West End, in the basement of the Bond family home, with Julian's office just down the hall. So Julian would sometimes walk down the hall and see what was going on with the show and find himself on camera or running the camera, in one famous instance, semi-successfully. Around 1984, James left the show as co-host, and the show moved geographically, moved to Candler Park and eventually to Inman Park, and also underwent a kind of a metamorphosis into what I can only call a weekly psychosocial theater, in which various characters, queer and otherwise, underground Atlanta musicians, drag queens, and all kinds of other people sort of worked out their relationship to the city of Atlanta and worked out Atlanta's relationship to the surrounding areas of Georgia, partly through the mythology of the ever-expanding mythology of the singing Peak Sisters, Wanda, LaShonda, and Starla, and many more as they kept getting added over time. Related somehow to the Odoms and the Fanes, all from Odom's all double-wide mobile home park, which I believe we'll see a little bit of tonight. So a conjunction then, American Music Show is queer, but not only queer. It's a conjunction of queer with the musical underground of Atlanta, with civil rights history, and with city politics. So it's a fascinating conjunction that there's a lot of unpacking to do there. In addition to everything I've just said, a young RuPaul wrote a fan letter to American Music Show sometime in the first year of his existence and quickly found himself on camera doing his first television appearances. And all through the 80s, RuPaul is a frequent guest on the American Music Show, promoting his projects, giving dancing lessons with RuPaul in the U-Hauls, concert performances by Wee Wee Pole, and all kinds of other things. And so that's another incredible thing that this documents. They taped at home. Remember, public access television was the cable company coming in, and James and others negotiated that they had to provide public access television. A studio, equipment, training, and the ability to produce and broadcast your own show. The American Music Show removed the studio part and taped at home. So the performers were less inhibited, and there was less sort of tamping down on what might be said and shown on the show. That brings me to the slogan of the American Music Show, one of them, which was emblazoned on the tapes they hand presented to the cable company, which was always low standards. Right? Always, not just low standards, but always low standards, whether you feel like it or not, okay? Don't let technology get in the way of inspiration, and don't let some idea of community standards impinge your creativity and what you have to say about living in the city, right? If it's not fun, don't do it. That was the Fun Tone slogan, right? So the American Music Show created a cultural world for the entertainment of, and also the location of, like minds, right? It attracted people. It wasn't just entertainment, it was about attracting an audience and attracting and building a community during what was a very difficult time for the queer community. It's an example of creativity through friendship that retains its humor, and I'm sure, that because of its preservation here in University Library, it will always retain the integrity of its always low standards. It's indestructible. And so I believe we're going to have, Andrew, is it 35 or so minutes of clips? Okay, and then we'll have a panel discussion afterwards, is that right? Okay, so please enjoy this reel of clips from the American Music Show, and we'll see you afterward. Thank you.
We always try to promote all of the gay and lesbian stars that we possibly can.
Okay,
Hello,
thanks
hi
for the
everybody.
signal. Oh, hello. We're going to do a game show here tonight. It's a wonderful prize for all of you that want to win a mobile home.
The show that we are doing now is a spin-off of a radio program that I did with my friend James Bond. And then we decided we wanted to do a public access show because we like television so much. So we just started doing it.
I do one of these and then one of the others. Can you do twice? I watch the American Music Show. I watch the American Music Show. I watch the American Music Show. I watch the American Music Show.
This is Reginald Lee. I'm watching the American Music Show. Please enjoy.
Cable TV.
Before they stole my TV, I watched the American music show.
Oh, hello everybody. It's Betty Jack Devine, and we're about to go down to downtown Atlanta to beautiful Velvet, where we're gonna have my exclusive signature report featuring the stars of that great new movie, Paris is Burning. So come on now and get in the car before we just melt out here in this hot sun. See, it is so hot that people have lost their minds. They're walking out in front of the cars like they couldn't even see it. It's so hot that there's hardly anybody out here. Only the very young and the insane, I guess we are in the other category, would come out in this kind of heat. It is just too hot. There's the bill man. I know he's doing a big business. But anyway, we're going on down to Velvet, and we're going to try to go down there. And you know what I want when I walk in the door? I want me a great big old cocktail with a lot of ice in mine. Before I say anything else, I have to say welcome to Atlanta. Welcome to the American Music Show, you all.
Oh, thank you, Betty Jack.
Now, all of y'all that have been to my house know that I love a pageant more than anything. I just watch any kind of pageant I can see on the television. But these pageants and balls that they have more categories than anything, and I mean even more than Miss South Carolina. Now, I want you all to explain to me some of these categories and how they're judged and whatnot.
Well, let's see.
They range from executive realness, where you dress up looking like the CEO of Merrill Lynch, or Coors Beer, and wear a briefcase on your head full of documents and all sorts of things, just like real CEOs do.
And sportswear, leatherwear, evening wear, and of course, the most popular current category,
voguing.
Oh, yeah.
And Betty, you'd be wonderful at voguing.
I was always wanting to be a ballerina dancer when I was a woman grown. That's my dream. They say a dream will come true if you're good. I always try to do good, God, be a Bible-acting Christian. But sometimes it seems like don't matter what I do, everybody hates me.
I'm Wanda P. We're interrupting the program again. We done got you coming now. We're standing out here by the Walmart. Y'all can see that's the Walmart. Star Booty has come down here. Star Booty's still getting ready, still putting on makeup. There still ain't been no kind of news event. We ain't seen no parade. They told us we was supposed to come down here. We was going to be judging a three-legged race. There's going to be a spelling bee, black race against white race. We ain't seen none of that.
Hi. Hi, love yourself. You can be wonderful. You too can be wonderful.
This Wanda Peak, we still having a special report. We still here. We're supposed to be a parade. So far, Star Booty has done had an interview. We're gonna ask him about that interview. Star Booty, what questions did you get asked in your interview?
Well, actually, they were the questions that I assumed I would be asked, and I was prepared. My answer was, the whole issue here is not racism. The issue here is self-hatred. If people learn to love themselves, they wouldn't have to hate anybody else to feel good about themselves. You know what I mean?
It looks like to me if they felt good about this, if somebody would have had enough respect for what was going on to wear majorette suits, they're supposed to be having a parade.
Black and white together. Black and white together. It's time to get ill.
Y'all can see up yonder, they're going to show y'all signs that says welcome to Forsyth County. They don't mean it.
Well, you start off with a nice prayer, and you ask that the players playing that game tonight is going to be protected. But then sometimes the preachers goes on, and they says that they wants the other team to be whipped up on by their own team during the game, and that they hope that that's going to happen, and that's what they's praying for. Now, when you're just having like some kind of game between Douglas County and Taliaferro County schools. Well, Taliaferro County is a long way from here, and ain't nothing but the football team and a carload of cheerleaders and maybe some mamas and daddies going to come to that game. So if the preacher there prays that the other team gets whomped up on, ain't going to be too many people there to protest about it, and they're going to be pretty quiet because they so outnumbered. But if Douglas County High plays something like East Cobb, well, they's just like that. And there's going to be just as many people there from East Cobb as they are from Douglas County. And when that preacher prays and says that he's praying that that other team gets whomped up on, well, there's going to be some kind of mighty big disturbance there. And I tell you right now, that is not going to be humbling thyself when you get in that big fight, defending the fact that your preacher has said the other team ought to get whomped up on, and that's what they's praying for.
The end of the world depresses me, and I just like to read. All the kings, including the kings of the East, Begin, doesn't that say Begin, B-E-G-I-N, Begin, moving toward Israel?
Yes.
An army of unbelievable size moves out of Asia toward the Euphrates River, which must be dried up to allow millions of troops to cross over. They pour into the valley of Medigo, called Armageddon.
Well, those introductions.
I have kind of researched a little bit on titles for Silly Satan.
I've been referred to as just about anything that you could ever think of. So lay 'em on me.
Well, some of the lighter ones are like Missy of Darkness.
That's appropriate.
Luciferina.
Well, 17th century, but that's pretty good.
Empress of Hot Uncomfortable Clothes.
I wouldn't have it embroidered on anything because it's a lot of letters.
Angel of the Bottomless Pit, but that's a pretty universal.
Well, that's my own personal private life. I don't think you have to anything. I'm sorry, but I'm not talking about that.
Shepherdess of the Unsuspecting.
That's one of my favorites. Oh, when I think of that one.
Wrangler of the Ignorant and Ungrateful.
Another favorite. It's especially incantated a lot during the 17th and 18th centuries. They really took advantage of that one.
Victimizer of the Inappropriately Dressed.
Well, always a favorite. Still popular to this day, especially concerning 1970s and 80s, early 80s wear.
Grand Mistress of the Woefully Underemployed.
Well, especially popular during the Republican years in the White House, and whenever there's some kind of Republican majority in in the house, always invoked, to bring about havoc.
High Priestess of the Self-Absorbed.
Love that one.
And this is really, I think, the last one on my list. Grand Poobah of the Prissy and Overdressed.
Well, I don't know why anybody gets that kind of an idea.
Feeling One by one, we broke each vow we made. It was you who lied, it was me who paid. As sure as there's a heaven beyond the sun, we'll pay for our lies one by one.
Those boys are just showing it all off today.
Robert, look over there. There's Onassis.
Oh, my, my, my.
Onassis, come over here, darling. Come over here.
I'm going to give you my seat.
MTV girl, MTV. Sit down, girl, and tell me how you been doing. I'm fine, darling. I'm all right. Considering the circumstances. I want to know about everything in New York, and I want to know why you weren't there when I was there just last weekend. Where were you, girl?
Oh, girl, the money, girl. You know, black girls can't keep money because they spend them on boys, you know.
Ooh.
Girl, the boys in New York were fabulous, fabulous, fabulous. Oh, every night, boys, boys, boys. Love, love, love.
Okay, y'all. We have come down to the Cracker Barrel for what? To get some of what we want, some respect. Y'all know we all need respect. So if you's going down to the Cracker Barrel like we are now, y'all know all you people that can hear us all over the place down here, don't eat. Go in there and sit down and have yourself an iced tea or something. On account of because we don't want to spend no money in there because they don't support nobody. It's worth nothing.
People have said they've looked into the sun out here and have seen the Virgin Mary or have seen the sun spin, dance, move in the sky, and do other things. But
Outside the city of Atlanta, another state of mind exists. An unaltered state of consciousness so foreign to the hubbub and mania of urban identity it staggers the mind. There is a place where land is the only thing that lasts, where the family unit stands as it has stood over the vast void of time and space. Journey with us now as the award-winning American Music Show takes you to I-285 and beyond, and beyond, and beyond.
This was a piece from last year's show. I wore a see-through dress, and nobody looked.
Did you show Arch about the 3D glasses?
No, where are those 3D
We've decided
glasses?
you need to give out. You need to give out your artwork with a set of these 3D glasses because it's just
IMAX people. Talk to the.
So why are you getting married then?
Money. Money.
Here we are back at the party and we're having a great time.
So do you want this beautiful blender too?
Yes, I want the blender and I want respectability.
I think marriage brings that just automatically.
So now it's a time in every bachelorette party where the bachelorette gets to win an exciting prize.
You better let me win. I'm the bride.
And this prize has a retail value of over $45.
Ooh. Cheap shit.
And what we're playing is a contest called Guess the Smell. Do you know what smell this is, Claire?
Shit.
Guess again. Roses. See how easy
we were gonna
that
have
is?
a hard time with this one.
So let's blindfold Claire so that everything will be fair and it'll be fun.
We don't want her to have any clues
All right.
to this.
And here's the first thing. And for the people who want to play along at home, you should close your eyes because Bud's going to show what Claire is smelling. So Claire, can you guess what the smell is?
It's the wrong
What
one.
is
It's a gardenia.
Yay! It's a gardenia.
So good at this.
Okay. That's what she's got to get all 4 smells right, and she'll win this beautiful blender. She's 1 down, 3 to go. All right, this next smell, let's see, is right here.
He's got it up there.
And let's see if Claire can guess what that is.
Ugh, that's cheese.
What kind of cheese? Could you be more specific?
Burger cheese. You fuck you.
All right, so that's 2 smells down. Now our next spell is smell number 3. And if you don't want to play along at home, now close your eyes, because Bud's going to reveal what it is. So it's this one now.
But you get the cheese away from the children and hide that one
Okay,
also.
Claire. What is it?
Poppin'.
Yay!
I'm hearing the disco here.
So that's 3 down.
Three out of 3 so
Yeah,
far.
Patsy, I left the other smell in the other room. So now if Claire can guess this final smell, and Patsy, show everybody at home what it's going to be. We'll
Bud's showing
give her
them,
this
too.
beautiful blender, but she's got to guess this smell.
Are those my shorts? I swear to God, those are my shorts. No, it says Wednesday. Oh, there she goes. Oh.
Claire,
was
can
that
you guess
smell?
that smell? Claire.
Claire, what was the smell?
Claire. Claire.
I don't think she knows what it is.
Oh, well, time's up.
How come you used to make life, God, if it ain't happy? How come you used to make something like pretty and then not give it to everybody? I was looking at one of your flyers. They're so pretty. Everybody loves pretty. I was so ugly.
Hi, I'm Pamela Thompson, and I think that James Bond is one of the sexiest men in America.
Little technology. So, what you been doing, James?
About the same old thing. You know, trying to talk to the stars, talk to Lauren Michael this week on the telephone.
Lauren Michael or Michael Lauren?
Lauren Michael. I know that because my brother said, "Thank you, Lauren." And I don't think he calls him by his last name.
Well, some people do that, go by their last names, but you never know.
His show, though, is on the upswing. Saturday Night Live is on the upswing. They've had particularly good musical guests in the past
I
couple
enjoyed
of
it
weeks.
the other night.
I'm ready to do some serious fishing here in Lake Claire.
Are you okay, Clem?
Yeah, I feel great, Potsy. Boy, this is great.
I think
so
I'm
glad
getting a
I'm
bite.
fishing here with y'all.
Got a bite?
Oh, I think it's a brim.
Did he incorporate?
I think it's a
catfish into
brim.
the pickup line? Like something about the catfish?
You want to see the fish I caught?
Ooh, that's just great.
Anyway, it's been great being on the American Music Show. I haven't been on in so long.
I think we've got a phone call. Just a second.
Oh, great.
Hello?
Dick Richards, please.
This is he.
Dick, this is congressional candidate Julian Bond, calling to wish you a good evening and to hope that everything you desire turns out well.
Oh, thank you. Can you help out with that in any way?
Also, want to wish you a happy Valentine's Day, which is coming up quite soon.
Is
And
this a
hope that you get
recording?
many cards and letters.
Is this
a recording?
No, this is not a recording.
Oh, good.
It'd be a good one.
It would be a very nice one.
I hope you watch the Peak Sisters special.
I'm planning on it.
11 o'clock tomorrow night. Tune it in.
Is it State Senator Julian Bond, really?
Yes, it really is. I'm running for Congress.
Wow!
Your vote and your support.
Oh, I loved you on Saturday Night Live.
Thank you. That was April 77. The original cast members, John Belushi, Dan Aykroyd, Gilda Radner, the lovely Lorraine Newman, and, of course, the ever-popular Bill Murray. Now, I'll tell you something about this show. Garrett Morris, too. Don't forget the black guy. I'll tell you something about this show.
No, don't
These
forget
people
Garrett Morris.
had a remarkable sense of camaraderie because their pay was quite low. They could only afford one cigarette, but they passed it around so that everyone could share.
The sinkhole of solitude just off Isolation Row. Pardon me. I'm sorry. I have to drive right by there on my way to peaceful happiness in the sunshine.
I'm very pleased that I can bring some transgender rock and roll to New York City. I mean, not that they need it, but my own brand of transgender rock and roll. Well, actually, you know, not too many transgender people are into rock and roll. Most of them are maybe into disco or dance music. So I like to stay into the rock and roll to keep myself, you know, unique. Because I'm a rock and roller, you know, and being a Southern girl, I got that rock and roll down in my bones.
Hey, little boy, do you like my style? It's guaranteed to make you smile. I'm the girl who's gonna even the score. Hold you back until you're sore. Hello, Daddy. Hello, Mom. I'm the Cherry Bomb. Hello, world. I'm the wild girl. Cherry Bomb.
And it came out over here on the Phil Donahue show. Anyway, when he came over, he said, I don't know what to call this person. I may call this person a he, a she. I'm not sure. And I just said, well, she, I'm a she, call me she, call me she, call me she. Of course, my cousin was watching the show, and he rang up my mother and said, Wayne, Wayne is on the Phil Donahue show, and they're calling him she. And he's wearing makeup, and he's wearing lipstick, and all my relatives saw it, and they were quite amused, as most of my relatives are.
Did they tape it?
Can I say that? Baptist bastards.
It'll lift your spirits and give you a little bit of that Christmas cheer. Welcome, Pike.
Well, you know, cousins, there's nothing like the holidays to bring family back together.
That's
and
right.
I travel all the way from Long Island to come down and read a Christmas
that's a
poem that
long
I've written
one.
for the
I don't
little
even know where
ones.
that is.
You know, and Christmas is a very special time for the little ones, and especially my little
I think
ones.
so.
And I wrote this poem for them because, you know, with all this talk on television and these movies about nuclear disaster, my children have been asking me, Daddy, are we going to get blown up? And my only answer can be maybe, because y'all know the bombs could fall at any time.
Mm-hmm. We saw
But, you
that
know,
on TV.
There's one thing I like to tell my children, that regardless of what happens, there'll always be a Christmas.
That's true. I'd like to believe that too. After seeing that movie on TV, I'd like to believe that.
So for all the children out there, and for my children, and for yours too, I wrote a poem about them. So let me begin. 'Twas the night after the Holocaust, and all through the nation, few life forms were moving, only malformed crustaceans.
I can feel it.
You're a child
just like the truth and the stars. You've got a right to be here, and whether or not it is clear to you, the universe is exploding like a big old bomb.
These are the ways you can know if your parents are going to kill you. Number 11, when they make your bedroom into a wild fox den. Or number 12, if they drop you off to school at the alligator farm.
I understand you got in a big argument. I know. How many times have you been arrested in the civil rights movement?
Oh, many times.
Over 30?
Oh, over 30 times. And I met Jabari after I did the documentary. I heard it through the grapevine with James Baldwin. And James and Pat Fontaine and Dick Fontaine and I went out to dinner. And we met Jabari.
You know, his...
Great song. Jabari, Jabari, where do you come from? Where do you roam? And where do you come from, my Cotton-Eye Joe? Well, met Jabari, and to my amazement, he sat across the table and told me that the movement of the 60s went in the wrong directions. Dropped my fork.
Well, what did he mean?
He said we set the world back 100 years.
Well, where was he?
He was in college preparing to take over all these wonderful jobs.
That's right.
That we open up. And I told him so. And he says, no, you people went in the wrong direction. We needed an economic change in this country. And I said, honey, you couldn't even get into the bathroom.
Breaking news! Breaking news! Breaking news!
As for my opinion of those potato chips, I thought they were too crunchy and a little too greasy. And I noticed at a party I was at and they had them, that the bong got all greasy and slippery after everybody was eating the potato chips.
Chips in the bong? What?
This does say that these are supposed to be some of the crunchiest potato chips around, and I guess if you're going to have kettle-cooked ones and original ones, you ought to have napkins.
Oh boy, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. This is great. The great outdoors like this. Oh God, I'm so glad they invited me. I needed the rest and relaxation to settle down from the fast-paced life of being a star. You know, oh God. Where are my sunglasses? Let's see. I love to come to Lake Claire so I could do research for my books and stuff. It's sex free! Sex free!
So I have to tell you a funny story about what happened at Holy Eucharist this week. I came out the door, and he's been having the most difficult lessons and sermons to understand, you know. And I said, what I meant to say was, I wanted to say, Vicar, I just wish we could just come to church and just unscrew our heads, and you could just fill it up with the Word. And it would be so much easier than trying to understand. But what I said was, I said, Vicar, I just wish we could come to church and screw our heads off. And he stopped me and said, Jen, I do too. But he said, think how the Methodists would read us if we did.
And right now, Sister Viola's going to read our scriptural reading upon which our sermon tonight is based. Sister Viola, will you read to us from the 5th chapter of Matthew, verse 5?
Matthew 5, verse 5. Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth.
may be mad, I may be blind, I may be specially inclined, but I can still read what you're thinking. And how many times has I got to hear that you'd be a whole lot better off? Besides, why can't you see? Wigwood is swinging. Wigwood is swinging. Let's go down to the security ditch. We can cast away them cans. I know that you said that you'd be better off, but then what else? You know, this place is the best. This place is the best. This place is the best. Tell me the wheel that rolls. This is the thing you say. This is the feel, this is my hair. These are the contents of the air. These are the pennies that you lent, and this is what they represent. This is how I feel, y'all. I love Wigwood, y'all. This is how I feel. Do y'all know how I'm feeling right now? I'm feeling like I ain't never felt before on account of cause I love all of y'all. And I'm so glad that all of y'all has done come out to support Wigwood 1994. It just shows that we has got a mess of great people in this here town, y'all.
So what did y'all think after seeing that? Now we need to answer on the mic so that it can be recorded because this is all going to be on YouTube, whether y'all know it. Oh, well, all right. So, so first, ladies and gentlemen, all the way from Asheville, North Carolina, John R.
Hey, everybody.
Ladies and gentlemen, all the way from Atlanta, Georgia, Tom Zerilli.
Glad to be here.
Ladies and gentlemen, all the way from Lake Claire, Lady Claire.
Hi.
All the way from Film Love, Andy Ditzler. All right, here, hold it. All right, now this side. All the way from Atlanta, Georgia, Potsy Duncan. And all the way from Funtown, Rosser Shemansky. Ladies and gentlemen, from the land of speed, Daytona, Florida, David Goldman. And ladies and gentlemen, all the way from the west side, James Bond. So do you got questions?
No, I have some, but if anyone else did, I guess I should be.
Right? You ask the first question, then you throw it over them. You get this party started.
All right. I mean, I had a couple, but I was one of the things I was curious about from a production standpoint. If you are making the show today, right? Given that public access, to a large degree, is a lot of what would have been on public access goes on YouTube, right? How would that have changed the show, or would you have done it? Could American Music Show, is it specifically a product of that particular era, or do you think it could be done today?
This is high fancy stuff here. So so what I was saying was I think that today's attention span is much shorter. I think people watch 2 and 3 minute and 4 minute videos, and if a video is 5 minutes long, forget it. You're never going to get to the end. It's just not going to happen. And so, the American Music Show at first was an hour long, and in the early days, and then it became a half hour long, and that, even that was just an all-night process to fill. So, I don't know. What do you think, Patsy?
I think the humor is too different, that it's a lot harder to make fun of things these days.
I also
that
think that-
everything's already too extreme.
Yeah. One thing is a lot of us met them by just watching the show and then sending letters or figuring out some way to be on, because there really weren't a lot of ways to be on TV. Now you can just get your own, YouTube. You can just be on YouTube all the time. But specifically what we did was we wanted to be on TV. That was our main goal. And the only way we'd done that before was go to an Ernest Angley, show at the Civic Center and got saved, in a big stunt that looks great. So it was our chance to be on the show, to be on TV somehow. We kind of didn't think, oh, it's public access, right?
Related to
matter.
that, I'd like to ask how many people in this room actually were on the show at one time or another?
One other thing I'd like to say about that is that home recording equipment was relatively new at the time, and people were really kind of amazed. A lot of people just 2 years before that had never seen themselves on any sort of TV, but now you have like every man, woman, and child is walking around with much more sophisticated equipment in their pocket at all times. And it's really a different mindset. I mean, it was really, everybody was very new to the media, and it was shocking that you could actually be on TV regardless of what it was.
Yeah, and I think also now people know their audience so much better. They figure out who they want it to be, and they target what they do to that audience. We didn't have a clue who the audience was. I don't, unless
All 16
they
of them.
contacted us.
We didn't know who any of them were. All 16 of them. We just couldn't keep track.
Who knew? But if you got a letter from somebody, then you knew, oh, that person's watching, and it was generally somebody who wanted to be on the show. So we're the only people watching, people who wanted to come be on the show.
That was how I got on the show. Yeah.
Ask for people to write in.
Yeah. So the first show I ever saw was James and Dick on the couch with RuPaul in between them. And I said, man, I have got to get involved with that. But I have a degree in TV production, so I was interested in working behind the scenes on the show. So I wrote him a letter and sent him a resume and a cover letter and everything serious. And the next week, Dick held it up and said, look at this fool wrote us. And ha, 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 isn't he funny? And I said, damn, I blew it. What did I do wrong? And then 2 weeks later, he called me and said, we want to come over to your house and interview you. And I said, I don't want to be on the show. I want to work behind the scenes on the show. And then sure enough, they came over. Dick and Patsy and Raina came over to my house, and they taped an entire hour over at my house. And I gave them gifts.
And given all of that, can you honestly say that you had no thought of being on the show?
No, come on, get real.
Well, my real goal was to actually, just and meet RuPaul, because I was obsessed with Ru. At that point, I'd lived in Midtown I'd only been in town for 6 months, but I lived on 14th Street, right where the Four Seasons Hotel is now. There was a series of houses right there. And RuPaul's posters were all over Midtown at that point. I was totally obsessed with him. And there, seeing him live on the show, taped on the show, was like crazy. And so sure enough, the second show I was on was at James's house, and RuPaul was there. And so I took everybody presents, and they liked me. That was my gimmick. I brought presents to everybody, buttons and paintings and all kinds of stuff, and I did that for the first couple of years, and then I just couldn't afford doing it anymore.
Well, Dick, on the very first show, put up the address and said, write in if you want to be on the show. And we had other people on the show, but none.
That guy with the beer can collection.
Right. We had a family come once. I can't remember that. I can't remember clearly what happened. But yeah, some of them weren't so good.
Well, the thing was, is they didn't really trust me at first. That's why they came to my house. They didn't want me to know where they were, so they came to my house to do the interview. You know, I mean, which made sense because we you know, they were stalked by that time by lots of people, so they had to watch it. I'm kidding.
Do we have any questions from the audience? Oh, sorry. I'm sorry. We need for the.
Okay.
State your name.
I just wanted to ask Tom Zerilli what was his first appearance on the show and what he did on the show.
You know, I'm waiting for somebody to tell me that because I think I was on like the second or third show. I was not on the first show. And I can't remember exactly what I did, but I was in a sketch comedy group in the years preceding that and probably did something that was well rehearsed as opposed to something that was totally unplanned like some of the other things or something written on a scrap of paper and then I'm reading it, you know, as I go along. So that was probably, and I was the sketch comedy group was Red Meat and Sprouts, so I think it was probably Red Meat and Sprouts routine that I did, and I don't know, and probably came in with Paul and Molly on that too, and I don't know what we really did. But of the people I worked with, Molly stuck with it really a long time. That's Wanda Peak.
Tom was on the second show, but and sat on the couch, and I can't remember what it was about. But he was on the second show. Eloise was on the very first show, and did this bit about Alcoholics Anonymous. Which when we took the show to the cable company, they refused to show it because of that. We had a big fight with Jabari about that.
They got one complaint.
Huh?
Didn't they show it and they got one complaint?
I think that's right, yeah. Yeah, but first thing it took us weeks to get the show on in the first place. But then finally we got it on, they complained about that on the first show. And so.
I really think it's great that you forced them to watch the whole hour to decide whether to put it on, you know, the people at the public access channel. I think the first time we were on was through Eloise, you know, because since she was in our band, we're like, oh, let's be on TV with her. And that was at your basement. So it was, I don't know, 81 maybe? Not sure.
I just wanted, oh God, that's what I sound like, sorry. This whole time, no one told me. I want to say, your question about could it be done today, I felt like I was really, I came in late to this game on the show and in the whole kind of movement. And I was kind of lucky to be in the last generation that I needed an engine to go search for people like myself. That's what put us all where we are. Whereas now you just need to search engine to find others like you. You can sit alone anywhere everybody can be in different states. But we were all together here. That's how that's how the show happened. That's how everything, in searching for ourselves and others like us, we were in one place. So a lot of the magic that happens, what you don't get, I feel like in today, and there's nothing wrong with today, I'm not being a curmudgeon, but what you don't see in it, what you saw in the shows and what we created was, it wasn't just Tuesday. We were all together 7 nights a week. And the magic that was created were the friendships that were built in the in-between times that you would never have gotten if you were just alone somewhere creating your own thing. And so I'm very fortunate to be one of the last. Now you can just be anywhere. And I'm, guilty of sitting alone in the mountains and doing my Grizzly Adams act. But I don't think it could be done today in an ensemble. Individually, everyone could do something, but I really don't think today it could be done in an ensemble.
Nobody wants to drive it.
Nobody can here, so.
In 84 and 85, and possibly in the 86, I lived with Dick and Teddy where the show was being filmed in Lake Claire. And one of the things that was interesting was that anything in the house could end up on the program. when they did when they did the parades, it's like they scrambled through looking for things, and like, are you using that? No, and this stuff would end up in a parade. Some of the things I had there and everybody else's things, and there wasn't a parade sequence, but one of the things they did was a Thanksgiving parade every year, done with miniature. It was done in miniature, and they just did it with junk from around the house, and it was like really phenomenal. And what I want to say is that now I think people are burdened by how easy technology is, that you can add all these effects to things and people get buried by the effects. And there it was like, find a funny costume, speak in a funny voice, or build some weird set. And that's the whole thing that made it work, was you actually had to do all this stuff, by hand. And the sloppier it was, the kind of crazier it was. And it really worked out in the long run doing it that way. And I don't think anybody is probably going to try to approach that. Again, it's like we're, so many things in entertainment have been taken over by, CGI and everything else. We're not going to see some of the things where you had to get like 10,000 people on a set in a movie anymore. And I think it's the same thing with this show. It's like, now nobody would do a show like this. But they would throw all these effects in where they would be lost and would be fighting over what effects they use on things. There, we just came in with crazy hats and crazy dresses and whatever and did the show.
Rosser, what was the genius, the jump? What would Dick do to have you do that? To appear, you would suddenly appear from the air. What did they just stop the camera? I think they just stopped the camera.
That was just when I would pop in. Remember when I would pop in? Yeah, so like in the early days, before I was doing characters, I was just me showing up to talk about my artwork and stuff like that. And then eventually Dick started talking me into like just doing goofy stuff. And then that's when the characters came. But yeah, so they would have me pop in, and basically it was just shut off the camera. Everybody would sit still. And then I would come in and I would be wiggling like this, as though I had just popped in from someplace. So, and everybody would be surprised. Oh, Rosser, you're popping in. David?
It's true. Rosser did that. He popped in.
All right, let's take another question here.
Yeah, I have a question. I think Forsyth was like 86 or 87. Were any of y'all there? 86, 87. So I was there with a group from seminary, and I was stunned. I was scared. I was petrified, and I did not feel safe. And just because, you see these generations of hate, and then you see all the guns and everything. So how was it being you in the face of that? Because I just don't know how you do it. So what did you feel when you were there with the protesters and with the guns and all that, and how you would produce something so light?
Well, let's see. I lived in San Francisco at the time, so I didn't go to that. But Lahoma, the one who organized the whole thing, had grown up with a mom who was a total activist. And when I went to high school with John, who went to the protests and organized the whole thing, and everything that we did when we did any kind of protest, including that one that I didn't go to, had to do with what Viola, John's mom, instilled in us as far as protest and how these people are crazy, and you just have to show up and not be afraid of them because they're, what the truth is and they don't. And that's pretty much what I know that John felt when he went to that. And it was kind of like, oh my God, I can't believe there are people in this country that still think that. Let's go show that that's just crazy. So I think there was a lot of that going on, and just putting the characters in that environment was something that seemed comical in a way. So there wasn't a fear thing involved with that much.
And I'll say, I wasn't at that either, but the last, little bit of video that you saw of Deandra Peak when she was singing on that back of that flatbed truck was at one of those Queer Nation protests at the Cracker Barrel back in the day when they were going to Cracker Barrels all over the place and stuff. And I went to several of those as Deandra Peak, and it was a little bit scary, but there were a whole lot of us. So yeah, I felt safe from that standpoint, you know. But there was that scare factor because you just didn't know what exactly was going to happen. I mean, we were like in Conyers and stuff. So I mean, you know, and anything could happen there. And honestly, you know, I don't get out of the perimeter, outside the perimeter very much, except to go down to Odom's. Just go home. Right.
So were y'all in Conyers when the Virgin Mary showed up and the sun spun around and everything?
Yeah,
because there was a cutaway in there.
Yeah, yeah. I was there, and it was an interesting scene.
Was it just you?
No, I went to that.
She went to that, and I think Catholicism, mystical Catholicism, is really interesting. And I was, you know, and these things happen all over the world from place to place, and Conyers was the place for about a year or two. And we went out there, very large crowd, and I did one stunt to people, which is people were looking at the sun while the woman that saw the Virgin Mary said she was seeing her, and everybody, I'm just looking at the sun. And I took a Polaroid picture of the sun, and I don't know if anybody remembers the way Polaroids worked. When they first come out, you can alter them by rubbing your finger on them. So I kind of knew where the sun was going to be, so I drew this like crown over the sun. And I showed them, like, look, it's a miracle. And these people were just totally like, oh my God, it's really happening. And I think we have some of that on the footage of that. But I was also impressed that a guy I knew, the sound man from 688, was doing sound for the Virgin Mary.
Yeah, and there were some people out there that were walking down this kind of dusty dirt path, and they were like, oh, look, the streets are paved with gold, and they were pointing to this thing, and as soon as they walked off, Tom and I leaned down, and it was like one of those, you know, candy wrappers with the chocolate almond thing that are gold, you know, stuck down there. But you just looked around that thing and you knew, seeing Billy over there, you know, the sound guy from 688, that this is a production. This is like a show, you know, so we could do this. And as far as the band I was in, that's the kind of thing we would have done, is we did a theme show every show. So it was like, wow, we could do this, you know, something like that.
Hi, I have 2 questions. Is that okay to ask 2? Yeah, okay. So my first question is, I'm curious if folks could talk a little bit about Richard or Dick. I felt something in the room when his name was uttered, and I just would like to know a little bit more about him and what made him so special to everybody who was part of the show. And then my second question is about what is the relationship between the American music show or public access media more generally and democracy and rights in terms of giving voices to the more marginalized? What kind of lessons or insights did you get from that?
Well, I was Dick's boyfriend for 37 years. I met Dick the same year that the show started, 1981. And one thing I learned was never to speak for him, never to say what he would say about something, because he was always full of surprises. I have to say tonight that I can speak for Dick to say this, that Dick would be enormously pleased with this outpouring of interest and support, especially with all the work that Andrew and Randy and Andy have done. And I just thank you so much. That clip reel was beautiful. It was a fantastic clip reel. This is a crazy show. It's very hard to capture in 35 minutes or whatever, and you did a great job with that, so thank you very much. Dick was a really lit up, fun person. He loved everybody, and he was fundamentally about inclusion. And so and I've talked to Andrew a little bit about this, but I mean, I gave a little bit of pushback about this thing of this show being queer culture. I said, lots of people who were on the show, people who were on this panel, were straight, not gay. And I don't want anybody's contribution minimized. Dick was not about labels and groups. For many, many years, Dick refused to identify himself as white, even though he was. He would check other on those government forms just because he said, I just don't like that question. I don't like answering that. And so really it was, the show in a lot of ways was an outgrowth of his love of people and his finding joy in so many things. I mean, that we just forever, and I still now without him, I still find things that like, the other week with the R. Kelly thing, I was like, we would have got that on the show some way. We would have got that crazy man on the show some way. And so it was stuff like that. And I'll let James answer the other question about that.
Well, what happened with the other question is my brother, Julian Bond, was chairman of the local NAACP. And at the time, Cox Media owned the cable company. They owned the largest TV station, the 2 largest newspapers, so they controlled the media. And they changed the rules at the FCC so that they couldn't have cross-ownership. So the NAACP filed a suit to make them divest, and about a license renewal suit, make them divest. In the meantime, Cox proposed to merge with General Electric, which never happened. But in order for them to merge, they had to get rid of this complaint, which was never heard. The complaint was never heard. It was pending before the FCC. But they couldn't merge until they got rid of the complaint. So they came to the NAACP and said, we'll help you out if you get rid of this. So they put up a bunch of money, both GE and Cox. They built a media center at Clark. They spent lots of money in the city, and they agreed to divest and make as a result of the divestiture to provide public access. At the time, the cable was only in the northern half of the city. That's one of the things they wouldn't build in the black community. So anyway, they had to divest. But at the same time this was happening, there was a nationwide push for public access, led by George Stoney as one person at NYU, goes way, he was connected with the Weavers. But anyway, so when they divested, I was on the city council. So we had to issue the franchise for the new company, and we insisted they provide public access. And they said they would do a bunch of things, which they never did. But one thing they did do was provide public access, and they built 5 studios and provided equipment. So when that started, Dick and I were doing this show on radio. I said, let's take advantage and get our show on TV. But we never used their equipment, never used their studio, did it all at home. But that's how it started, and it is all about free speech. And it's really not needed now because everybody has the internet now. So, but that's how it started.
And I'll say one more thing about free speech, that Dick believed in free speech. Dick believed in free speech regardless of what it was. And he bonded with me over this thing. I grew up in South Carolina like Dick did. And when I grew up, you could hear Klan rallies from about a mile down the road, sometimes in the summertime, and you hear these people. And my grandmother, who was by no means a liberal or an integrationist, would say, listen to those people. You can listen to them and tell they're not right. And I have always believed that don't take the microphone away from anybody. If their ideas are crazy, their ideas will be revealed as crazy. And that was fundamental to our show.
Yeah, I do. Dick, I just don't even really have words. All I have are his actions. I mean, it's examples that one of the greatest things, and I think it encapsulates him for me, and one of the greatest things I was ever told was one night after dinner, we were washing the dishes and putting them away. And they'd lived in that house for years, he and David. And there was something that I didn't know where it went. And I said to Dick, where does this go? And Dick went, well, I don't know. And I was like, well, but you've lived here for a long time. It must go somewhere. And Dick went, anytime I have something that I don't know where it goes, I simply put it in the first place it fits, and then pretend that's where it's always been. And it was incredibly liberating. I have applied that to everything going forward in my life since then. That it really, the basis was just, why are you getting bound up about this? Why are you, that it really just fit it in and move on, so.
One thing I can say about Dick is, we were in a band and we wanted to get signed by a record label, and we talked to a bunch of big deal record labels, and things were moving along really slowly, and we were kind of disappointed. And the next thing we knew is Dick started a record label so he could put us out. And it was like, oh, great. This is what we needed. So, it's like you just kind of talk about what you want around him, and he just figures out some way to do it, or decides whether he wants to. And it wasn't even that he came to us and said, okay, here's the deal. It's just, I've got a record label now, I don't know how that works, but it sure did work.
Swimming pool. Told us to put a swimming pool in.
Hi, I had a quick question. You were saying before about how you didn't really know who your audience was then. And I'm wondering, how do you guys all feel now about this being in a university archive, about people watching this potentially, 100 years from now as a collection, a slice of life in Atlanta in the 80s? Like, I imagine that would be kind of mind-blowing.
Oh, well, yeah, it's really exciting, I think. And it's like, the way I look at it is what we were doing at the time and what anyone thought at that time, that doesn't exist anymore except on that screen. And still, you don't know that. So whoever picks it up and looks at it makes their own decisions about it, and I love that. It's like, what is it that they think? That all of you are sitting here now. This is a bigger audience than the show ever had, for sure. So it's like, get academics involved in it, and woo, what happens?
Well,
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's that great quote that RuPaul had, that when he said when he got hooked up with the show, he said, "I found my tribe," and I think for a lot of us that was the similar sort of feeling, that we created, this family or this tribe out of this that didn't exist before, and that was very sustaining to us, and is very sustaining to us even all these many years later. So.
And one thing too is that when you're doing a show like that, or any kind of show like the kind of stuff we did in the band I was in, it's like you're entertaining yourself, really. And so it's a lot easier if you're talking to a camera or performing to a camera, because you don't know who's going to see it, and it really is for yourself. And it's certainly for Dick, because if you watch any of the show, Dick is laughing more than anyone. So you were really playing to him, And so I think that has a lot to do with who the audience is. It's really all of you, that are involved in doing it, and that gives you a bond.
My involvement, like a lot of people, as the show went on for 20 years, was lessened as it went on. I was always glad they were still doing it. But I think when I first started, I think a lot of people were like, we're going to get famous doing this. But you had to believe that. And then after so many years, like, we're really not going to get famous doing this. But it's good that we did it, and it probably will end up in an archive someplace. So I actually kind of believe that. But it was, others around that, had seen the show in passing, like, that stuff's garbage, but I mean, I thought it was just terrible. And, but I mean, I think that people that got involved in it really realized there was value in it. There was value in doing it. And it was for me, it was a very creative thing.
Go ahead.
I just wanted to add that toward the late 90s, when I was doing club promotions and things like that, a number of times I met now kids of age who'd grown up in Atlanta and were old enough-ish to go out, or cute enough not to get thrown out. So, but I could not convince them that Deandra Peak did not exist in California. That they had grown up seeing this late, staying up, late on Friday. What was it, on Friday or Saturday night? Friday nights?
Friday night.
Friday nights, yeah. That they had snuck looks and saw, and to them, Deandra Peak and these characters were H&R Puff and stuff. Everyone knows who these people are. And I'm like, no, they were, it's a regional. No, so how many people were sent out into the world with this in their mindset that, you see it on YouTube, the nation's seeing it. But there was a little bit of that going on with regional television. That there were a number of people who carry all of you with them in their minds as being Sid and Marty Krofft.
And one other thing I'd like to say about Dick is when I thought about when I thought about Dick after he passed recently, I realized he documented everything in my life, every thing that went on with me, like when I met my husband, when I got married, when I moved. It's like my whole life was documented by him and put on the show. Whether it was like a sketch or not, it was like reality. And so that's something, that he thought that was funny enough or important enough or whatever it was. I loved that. I think, wow. At the time, nobody had phones. Now everybody documents everything they do. But back then, it's like, I never would have had any of those memories if he hadn't done it.
Yeah.
So
And, it's weird to me too, Claire, because I mean, in some of the sympathy notes, numerous sympathy notes that I got after Dick died, people said to me, I moved to Atlanta because I came to visit somebody and I saw this show.
Wow.
And I'm thinking, like, what kind of a freak are you, right? But truly,
Yeah.
truly,
And then-
I mean, it influenced a lot of people that way.
And then here we are in Atlanta doing this show in somebody's house, in somebody's basement, and then we decide, we get to play in New York. We sent off a press kit, and this club that became wildly popular was run by a bunch of people from the South who really wanted to be entertained by other crazy people from the South. So we showed up to play there, and Dick's like, call my friend, my childhood friend. And it turns out to be somebody just as nutty as he is that's carrying a camera around with him everywhere, and his stuff's in the New York University archives, So it's like, who would think that Dick would have this other friend that he grew up with where he would document everything we did there?
Yeah, I mean, that's a whole other archive. You could do
Right.
a whole other show about Nelson Sullivan's archive
my
at the
gosh,
Phillips
yeah.
Library in New York University. So
Nelson's a genius. He's a
Oh
real
yeah,
genius.
he was amazing, and to think that they grew up together, and going to Nelson's funeral, like his casket was a movie star casket. It was unbelievable. I just was in a small southern town, and it made me feel so close to him, But he was great, just as nutty as Dick.
All right, so we'll take one last question before we get to the reception part. Yeah.
I just want to know your guys' thoughts on how the queer cultural landscape of Atlanta changed during the show and after.
Well, I can answer this I'll answer this real briefly from Dick's last interview with Matthew Terrell. Matthew asked him that question, and Dick said, it's become like going over to somebody's house on Thanksgiving. You never know what you might say that's going to set someone off. He said, I'll just talk about the weather. No, wait, that's controversial too, he said. So there was a lot of, I think in our time, I think there was a lot more ability to make fun of stuff, perhaps with a lot more liberty than people have now. I just think there was a lot more freedom in terms of expression, perhaps than people would be allowed today, in my opinion.
Yeah. One thing I might want to add to that, as a straight person, I can still say this. The show was kind of an outlier for the gay community in town because most of the stuff in the clips was a lot more conservative than what was going on at the show. And a lot of people thought those are these crazy, scruffy people, like, ooh, don't come near me. And I'm talking about like the very serious drag queens, like Lily White and Charlie Brown and so forth. They would want nothing to do with the show. And so what they created was a whole new generation. Yeah, the standards are too low. I mean, you don't just quickly run in a thrift store and buy a wig and some other stuff and do some strange thing with it. But it really affected the whole look of everything in the long run. It really changed that from the fact that basically the presence of RuPaul in America today is because of the show. On that.
Well, yeah, and another thing is, with the Celebrity Club that you were the manager of, and we played a lot, and somebody from our band booked the bands. the whole idea for that club was, before that, there were like gay clubs and straight clubs and this club and that club, and nobody was together doing anything. And it was like, why do we have that? Why don't we just open up a club where everybody can do this, just like the American Music Show? So it never was a gay club, even though there were drag queens dancing on the bar. It was just anybody showed up and you were welcome. You had bikers and whatever, you know?
And us punk rock kids were
Punk rock
welcome
kids,
at the
they
celebrity
ruled.
club.
Oh my God, they were the cute kids. Oh yeah.
Hey guys, just to wrap up, I just want to ask, we're in archives, we've been talking about this. What do you hope your legacy is with the American Music Show and with what you've done?
Can I at least just get a word in edgewise from the panel on that side of the room,
Yeah,
please?
sure. You think you can?
I think truthfully, actually, most of us are actually shocked at all of this attention because we
love it.
It's amazing, and amazing from the standpoint that we were a lot of people who got together on a Tuesday night, and we ate dinner, and we drank a bunch, and did some other stuff, and recorded this TV show, I mean, for the most part, and it was basically a party, and it was a way for us to get together and do something and get a show out of it, which is what happened. And of course, it never would have happened if it wasn't for Dick, because he was the one who drove all the engines all the time, and stuff. So, I forget where I was going with that. I got so wrapped up in
It's
thinking
like
about
you're
Dick.
at the show.
But yeah, it's like, right. What's that? Well, I'm just so excited that it's here, I mean, because it just kind of means that there is a big segment of stuff that happened on this show, not just us, but all the other things that happened, and it's preserved for everybody to look at, whenever they want, which is just, it's so incredibly exciting. And the thing that's crazy is that People TV was filled with shows. I mean, lots of shows, tons of shows, I mean, my show came on right after Hosea Williams' show. And I always wondered what was the carryover audience, who was watching my show that watched Hosea's,
Hosea's was one of the great shows in history.
Hosea's was a fabulous show, yeah. And I mean, I would watch it waiting for my show to come on. And then weirdly enough, it turned out that show was actually produced by a guy that I worked with at Georgia Public Broadcasting, who has since retired. But weirdly, we found out like a couple of years later, he said, oh yeah, I produced Hosea's show. I went, oh my God, we're on right after you. But David?
Yeah, I just want to say, I would say that the legacy of the show is this. We had there were four co-hosts of the show historically. One of them was gay. We had, we introduced a superstar, a drag superstar. Our cameraman, rest in peace, God bless, Bud Lowry, was a former frat boy who wore a gator shirt with a collar turned up. We had the spectrum, and it was inclusive, and everybody was welcome, and everybody had a good time every week. And I think that was one of the things that we always want to remember.
Patsy?
Well, said it all.
All right, well, with that, let's thank our guests one more time and then go eat.